Good morning, folks. Welcome back to the Food for the Faithful channel with me, your reluctant prophet up here in beautiful Gracefield, Quebec. I have some thoughts as a follow-up to the blasphemous iconography at the Paris Olympic Games. But you might not like my conclusions, so please listen through to the end to find out why I make the assumptions I make. So my thoughts on the use of pseudo-religious iconography at the Paris Olympic Games. There are several scriptures in the Bible that refer to not creating images for worship. Here are a few key ones. Leviticus 26:1. This verse states, "You must not make idols for yourself, or set up a carved image or sacred pillar. You must not place a sculpted stone in your land to bow down to it, for I am the Lord your God." Exodus 22:6. This passage includes the commandment, "You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below." Deuteronomy 5:8. This verse says, "You shall not make for yourself an idol in the form of anything in the heavens above, on the earth below, or in the waters beneath." Deuteronomy 4:15-19. This passage warns the Israelites that since they did not see any form on the day God spoke to them at Horeb out of the midst of the fire, they should be careful not to act corruptly by making an image for themselves in the form of any figure. And it hopped around there. Let me get back to my place. Apologize. The form of any figure. Isaiah 42:8. This verse states, "I am the Lord, that is my name. I will not yield my glory to another, or my praise to idols." Acts 17:29. In this verse, the Apostle Paul says, "Therefore, since we are the offspring of God, we ought not to think that the divine nature is like gold or silver or stone, something shaped by art and men's devising." 1 John 5:21, the Apostle John concludes his first epistle with this admonition, "Little children, keep yourself from idols." These scriptures, among others, emphasize the prohibition against creating images for worship. Exodus 24:6 states, "You must not make for yourself an idol of any kind or an image of anything in the heavens or on the earth or in the sea. You must not bow down to them or worship them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God who will not tolerate your affection for any other gods." Therefore, regarding the creation of Da Vinci's Last Supper, recreation of the Da Vinci's Last Supper, the Paris Olympics, where a grossly unhealthy, overweight woman of perverse sexual orientation portrayed the Da Vinci's Christ figure. The painting The Last Supper was created by Da Vinci and was commissioned by Ludovico Sforza, who was the Duke of Milan, for the refectory or dining hall of the convent of Santa Maria del Grazia in Milan, Italy. The painting was completed between 1495 and 1498. It is one of the most recognized and admired works of art in the world. Therefore, out of an attempt to be blasphemous while insulting Christianity, the Olympic display of bad taste actually raises quite another critical aspect of Christian theology. Namely, why had the reformers from whom I am descended reject the use of icons and images in worship? The Reformed Christians or Protestants became iconoclasts, those who reject religious images during the Protestant Reformation in the 16th century. This was largely due to their interpretation of the Bible, particularly the second commandment, which states, "Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is on earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. Exodus 24:5. The Reformation was, in many ways, a revolt against what was perceived as the excesses and corruptions of the Roman Catholic Church, including the use of images in worship, which, of course, Da Vinci's painting is a prime example of. The Reformers argued that the use of images in Christian worship was contrary to the word of the Bible. They believed that images limited God and wrapped God up in human ritual and convention. Moreover, by the Middle Ages, the cult of saints had assumed forms which came very close to idolatry. Sculptures of saints were worshipped like gods, and people prayed to them for help with specific difficulties in their lives. The Reformers saw this practice as conflicting with the Second Commandment and the principle of monotheism. It is important to note that not all Reformed Christians were iconoclasts. Luther, for example, rejected the cult of saints but did not see pictures and statues as dangerous in themselves. The degree of iconoclasm varied among different Protestant denominations and continues to do so today. I provide all the links for my research underneath each section, so read the blog if you're interested to look at the sources for the information from which I drew my conclusions. Luther never truly rejected all his Roman Catholic sensibilities. His version of Reformation was merely a stopgap measure which dealt only in part with the issue of iconography and the commercialization of the gospel of Christ as big business where no one could buy or sell without the mark of the beast, namely the stamp of papal approval. So I thought I ought to weigh in regarding the freak show of the Paris Olympics and their attempt at a blasphemous portrayal of Christ as a fat, bloated, tattooed muff diver. When precisely have the French not adored perversion while persecuting the true Christian faith? The French Wars of Religion were a series of civil wars between French Catholics and Protestants, who were called Huguenots, from 1562 to 1598. Between 2 and 4 million Huguenots died from violence, famine, or disease directly caused by this conflict, and it severely damaged the power of the French monarchy. One of the most notorious episodes was the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre in 1572. The fighting ended with a compromise in 1598, when Henry of Navarre, who had converted to Catholicism in 1593, was proclaimed King Henry IV of France and issued the Edict of Nantes, which granted substantial rights and freedoms to the Huguenots. However, Catholics continued to disapprove of Protestants and of Henry, and his assassination in 1610 triggered a fresh round of Huguenot rebellions in the 1620s. The St. Bartholomew's Day massacre alone saw the streets of Paris run with blood as with water, when as many as 30,000 of the faithful were murdered in cold blood by rabid French Roman Catholics who obviously hated true religion and by doing so had persecuted Christ. It is moments like the freak show in Paris that makes me regret Canada and her allies shed blood to free the French from tyranny, when they returned to it like a pig returns to its slop trough. So I draw on a blog that I wrote on June the 6th of this year, entitled Meta-Narratives, False Doctrines in the True Church. In the wake of the Paris Olympics, I have heard evangelicals speculating on the coming of the Antichrist and the beast foretold in the book of Revelation, forgetting how every single one of the Protestant reformers knew that the office of the Pope had fulfilled this prophecy. So let us examine how the false doctrines of pre-tribulation rapture theory entered the modern evangelical church. It was John Nelson Darby who is credited with developing the pre-tribulation rapture theory, which he extensively taught and popularized. The theory suggests that Christ will remove the church from the world before the period of tribulation. Darby, an influential figure among the original Plymouth Brethren, is considered the father of modern dispensationalism and futurism. His teachings had a significant impact on the Bible Church and evangelical Christianity, particularly through the spread of dispensationalism and his Bible translations. Darby's ideas were further popularized in the United States in the early 20th century, notably by the Scofield Reference Bible. Again, providing all the links for that section below it in the blog. If you're listening to my words, go to the blog and look up these links yourself. They're all websites, and I don't ask for anyone to believe me. Look at the research that I've done and where this information is drawn from. So what parts of Darby's doctrine had originated from Cardinal Bellarmine's Counter-Reformation propaganda? Bellarmine was a Jesuit who wrote Counter-Reformation propaganda to persecute Christians. John Nelson's Darby development of dispensationalism was influenced by a variety of sources, including earlier works by Jesuit theologians such as Francisco Ribera and Cardinal Robert Bellarmine. While Darby is recognized as the father of dispensationalism, his ideas were not entirely original, but rather were built upon earlier theological concepts. The writings of Ribera and Bellarmine contain ideas that laid the groundwork for the future development of dispensationalism. These works were initially intended to counter the Protestant Reformation's interpretation of the Book of Revelation, which identified the Pope as the Antichrist and the Catholic Church as the whore of Babylon. It is important to note that while Darby may have been influenced by the works of these Jesuit theologians, his own doctrine was distinct and developed within the context of his time and religious environment. Darby's dispensationalism emphasized what he falsely thought was a literal interpretation of the Bible and the separation of God's plan for Israel and the church, which became a cornerstone of his theological framework. Again, all the sources below that. And now my conclusions. So I have a question to ask those of you who consider themselves to be Bible-believing Christians. How are we to fight cultural Marxist critical theory and its concerted attack on our faith if we have swallowed the lies of the enemy to believe in false doctrines which were not received in apostolic succession from the founders of the Western Gentile Church? Persecution is coming for the church, so we must prepare ourselves. The word rapture does not appear in the Bible, since it is not scriptural. Christ will return, and may we be found to be prepared when he does, as we busy ourselves equipping his body for that return. Fulfilling this divine commission is the only way we can stave off the ruin of godless critical theory in all of its manifestations, whether that be gender or race theory, since these false doctrines have now managed to infect the weaker churches who themselves have become woke. The phrase "be instant, in season and out of season" is a biblical reference from 2 Timothy 4, verse 2. In the King James Version of the Bible, the verse reads, "Preach the word, be instant in season, out of season, reprove, rebuke, exhort with all long-suffering and doctrine." This verse is part of a charge the Apostle Paul gives to Timothy, his disciple. The phrase "be instant in season, out of season" is often interpreted to mean that one should be prepared to proclaim the word of God at all times, whether it's convenient or not. Different translations of the Bible may use different wording, but the general message remains the same: to be prepared to always preach the word of God and to correct, rebuke, and encourage with patience and sound teaching. So, fat, bloated lesbians aside, whose attempt at being blasphemous has merely revealed yet another blasphemy, namely, the worship of graven images. The one's just as bad as the other. These are things to think and pray about as confusion descends on this, well, the new Babylon, this system that is emerging, that has caused utter confusion to come upon even the faithful. God bless you. Things to think and pray about. Have a lovely day.